Regular meeting for August 10th, 2020 at 6:33. Let's, hold on, I guess DCTV's no.
Don't worry about it. It's a delay.
Okay, my wife just says we are, so okay. So can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? There it is.
Wow.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
with liberty and justice for all.
Could all please remain standing for a moment? Let's have a moment of silence for all the men and women, past and present, who protect us at our great country. And please, let's keep in mind our healthcare workers who continue to fight the pandemic in our behalf. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Okay. First thing up is a 6:30 hearing for Eversource. Is Donna here? I don't see Donna.
I think she's a telephone call.
Yeah, it says so at the bottom, but it's got a red line in it.
Okay. I'm not showing anybody. I have mine set so it doesn't show anybody that's not actually. Oh, there we go. Okay. Donna, you there?
Donna?
Hi, Donna. If you can have me.
There we go.
I'm here.
Okay. Hi, Donna. Nice to hear you again.
Hi.
Okay.
Nice to see everybody. Okay. Okay, are we ready?
Yes, go ahead. You're on.
Okay. Eversource Energy would like to install conduit at 150 John Fercente Boulevard. This install is in order to accommodate a new service for a solar farm at that location.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments? Okay.
Motion to approve.
Okay, it is a hearing. Let me close the hearing. We have a motion to approve. Any second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call. Mr. Mickelson.
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yes.
Mr. Herron. John, you need to unmute yourself.
What's that?
Yeah.
John, wait a minute. John, you're still muted. Okay, okay, that's a yes. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
And me, yes. You're all set, Donna, on that. Next one, we have another
Okay.
hearing for proposed pole location.
Yeah. Eversource Energy would like to install a new pole on Bakerville Road, north of Meeting House Lane. This install is in order to provide service for a new 5-lot subdivision at that location.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Motion to approve.
Second. I will close the hearing on that one. And I'm sorry, did we get a second?
Yes.
Okay. Roll call vote. Mr. Mickelson.
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yes.
Mr. Herron.
Yes.
Mr. McDonald. You're muted, Sean.
Yes.
Okay, and myself, yes. You're all set, Donna.
So,
Okay, Greg, have a good evening. Thank you.
Frank, do you want to take the paperwork needs to be signed, so I don't know if you want to come in to sign it or you want to vote to have me sign it for the board.
Make a motion to have Mr. McGinnis sign on behalf of the board.
Second.
Yeah, that's my preference too. Roll call. Mr. Mickelson.
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yes.
Mr. Herron.
Yes.
Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you, Mr. McGinnis. Thank you. Sign away.
All right. And now you might want to vote on signing the warrant too while you're voting for me to sign.
Make a motion to do so.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote. Mr. Let's do it backwards. Yeah, Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yes.
Mr. Herron.
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay. So let me see. We have
DPW.
new business, Board of Public Works vacancy. We have 4 applicants. I know Kevin Murphy told us that he was not going to be available because he's out doing business. How does the board want to handle this?
Well, I mean, I saw the resumes. I'm ready to make a motion for an appointment. I don't know about you guys.
I got one comment.
Okay, please, comments first, yep.
We asked for recommendations from the Public Works, and they were gracious enough to give it to us. But the individual they recommend, we have never met or talked to. Although I certainly take there's great worth in the recommendation they gave, having never met this fella myself, I'm a little bit uncomfortable voting without having interviewed him. We interviewed others as well, or anyone who wanted to come forward. If anyone else agrees with me in that regard.
Mr. Mickelson?
I think we should move this forward to the next meeting so we can have these people come before us. Make a good decision. I haven't had a conversation with either one of them. Well, we interviewed Almy, I think it was, but not Mr. Price or the other 2.
Perfect.
Yeah, the purpose of the last meeting was not really for an interview, it was just to get acquainted, so you recognize the face and you...
Yeah, I'd feel more comfortable having an interview with them one-on-one.
Okay, that's fine. Well, we talked about that in the first place, so people were concerned that it was an appointed position and we were making people jump through hoops for it, so...
Well, there's a lot of people involved that are all very qualified. It's very interesting, a situation we're in for a change, thank you. And I hope it continues. But I, for one, I agree with David. I'd like to postpone it and put it on the next meeting.
I'm okay with that, too. Mr. McGinnis, do we need to vote, or just, is that okay to just do it?
I would vote, just to be safe, to postpone it till the next meeting, and you want to contact all 4 applicants and have them in?
Sounds like that's the right thing to do.
Yep, to make it fair, sure.
Well, we've already spoken to 2.
But that wasn't an interview, that was my point. That wasn't an interview. That wasn't designed to be an interview.
Well, it had an opportunity to be one. We just didn't use it.
We told them it wasn't going to be an interview, it was just to get acquainted.
Okay. Good
Opportunity.
point. Okay.
I would rather do it, if we're going to do interviews, let's do all 4, so that it becomes even and no one has any complaints.
Perfect.
Okay, somebody like to make a motion in that regard?
Make a motion make this a motion, as I said before. Let's have the 4 contestants that are coming up before this for the DPW job to have it on our next scheduled select board meeting.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay. Roll call, Mr. Mickelson,
Yep. Yes.
Mr. Tattelbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herring,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
and me, yes. So we'll do that at our next meeting.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Next item is Waterways Roger Street ramp maintenance discussion. Mr. McGinnis, would you like to carry that forward?
Sure. So this came to light, as you know, a proposed boat ramp that was part of a larger project funded through grant money and the BP2 oil spill money. I'm sorry, I got the acronym wrong, but there was some funding that was available for the town to install a new boat ramp and repair some of the public works storm drain facilities in the area. Historically, this happened a few years ago. It was combined. It was decided for the town to combine the 2 projects into one. Mike O'Reilly, the Environmental Affairs Coordinator, was spearheading the project in unison with the Public Works and also the Waterways. The project was completed about 2 months ago. And since it's been completed, it's been used, but the sailing school next door, Mr. Hurley, he brought up some issues with some sand migration over the boat ramp. So we contacted Public Works and Waterways to talk about a maintenance of the ramp in the future. There was some discussion about who's responsible for the maintenance of the ramp. Was the ramp installed properly? I went back and did some research. I think you can see in your packet what I provided was the scope of work that was presented, reviewed by Mike O'Reilly, prepared it in unison with the consultant and the engineers, and reviewed by Waterways and Public Works. The ramp is a shallow ramp. It was a mid-tide ramp, they call it. When you can see in your packet, there's a proposed and existing conditions contour plan. I think you see the contours on those plans are the same for the existing ramp and the proposed ramp, so I think it was supposed to be similar. If you see the design plan as well for the ramp itself, it shows it in line with the grade of the beach. So I think in speaking with, in emailing and corresponding with Mike O'Reilly, apparently the previous ramp had some sand migration on it as well. So it came to be, well, who is responsible for maintaining the ramp? I went back through the scope of work. In the scope of work, it was proposed that the Waterways would, let's see, the ramp is owned by the town. Management, maintenance, and supervision of the completed launch facility would be the responsibility of the Town of Dartmouth Waterways Committee. Funds for the continued maintenance and viability of the launch facility are assured through boater use fees, which have sustained the parking facility since the successful cleanup of the Park Oil Brownfield site. So that being said, I asked Harbor Master Steve Mello to help to develop a plan that he thought would be helpful to maintain the ramp. I think it's just the nature of the way it's constructed that the sand is, it's high tide sand and it's just going to migrate over. But if there's something that can be done to help, perhaps keep that at bay, so there's less maintenance required, and we can look at that and rely on Waterways to kind of come up with some solutions for that. So that's where we're at. The ramp is still usable. I think it's really made for small boats. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but small sailboats to be brought in and out. And it kind of is what it is on a ramp. I don't think it's made for heavy use. But that being said, that's kind of the information, and we just got to come up with a plan to maintain the ramp moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mickelson.
So I think it's a couple of issues here. Mr. Hurley, he also mentioned that there's a broken drainage pipe. When they were constructing that ramp, they broke that pipe, and that needs to be addressed. But more importantly, this migration of this sand, I had an interesting conversation a couple of times with the chairman of the Waterways, Mr. Hickey, and going back to during the construction of that of the ramp, there were Jersey barriers, to put it for no other. There were cement barriers or Jersey barriers. I guess they're both the same, and they were on that side where they get that migration of sand. And I guess, again, I'm not a boater. Is it a southwest wind that drives that in bad storms? Well, anyway, when they finished the ramp, they took the barriers away. They didn't have that problem when the barriers were up. So I would, and I think he agrees with me, that we need to go back maybe before conservation, put the darn barriers back if it actually works. Instead of spending an awful lot of money sending DPW crews out there after every storm with equipment that shouldn't be driving on the road to move sand that we probably could protect with those cement barriers, Jersey barriers, placed in the right spot. Again, I'm not a boater. Roger Race maybe might have something to say, but I did have that conversation with with the chairman, Mr. Hickey.
Okay, comments, Mr. Aaron, please.
I agree with Stanley. When I initially heard of this project in the beginning, it was to have a barrier to the side, and it was also going to be wider. This to me is just not what I originally was told was going to be the ramp.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well, could I just, if you don't mind, I'd like to, again, if we can, I guess there's a two-pronged issue here. Question is, do we need to go back to conservation to add these cement barriers? I don't know about that. We'll have to find out. And how long they should be, where they should be placed. I would think maybe Mr. Hickox could figure that out, and I'm sure his team could put them back. I'd like to know where they went also. Where did those cement barriers go?
Okay, comments? Any expert opinions? Roger, go ahead.
You have sand migration coming down due to the prevailing winds, as you can see in the photographs and if you've gone down there. A riprap or a dock or Jersey barriers is a great idea, Stanley. And since they're removable, in my opinion, I don't think you need to go to Concom. It's only when you put something permanent down there that you have to go get permission. And it would be great to have a simple, elegant solution that doesn't cost a lot of money. And I think that would be a very reasonable approach, first of all, and see how we do. I think that it's an easy experiment. Dave has the equipment, and I think the Jersey barrier is right back his place.
I assume the barriers would be going right back to where they were before. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct, on the windward side, so it prevent that buildup of the sand transport as it goes over the ramp.
Okay, Mr. McDonald.
Not to be a fly in the ointment, but I'm going to be. Wouldn't putting temporary barriers and leaving them there forever be considered a permanent solution? Oh, we'll take them out every third Thursday after the 25th reunion of the Dave Hickox Memorial. Roger, shush.
We'll pick one
Roger,
of them
shush. No, don't stop that.
All you have to do is pick one of them up. You don't have to pick them all.
Oh, Stanley, you can go down there and pick it up.
I'll find a way to get it done. I'm going to use your truck.
No.
I guess the question is, did we need any kind of approval for them to be there in the first place?
I thought you guys were in charge.
Ask. No, Frank, excuse me. I believe that was part of the design temporarily while they were building the ramp. And they said that they were no longer needed once they finished the ramp. Hello? I guess they were needed. So let's not pick on anybody. Not fair to it.
Well, if everybody thinks that's a good idea, perhaps Mr. McGinnis can find out if we need to get some other kind of approval before we actually move forward with that.
Yeah, I'll contact conservation. So just so we're clear, my concern with the barriers is where do you want them, or where do people envision them placed? I don't think you can put them on the concrete apron that's there now. I just don't think they can.
No. It'd be parallel and 3 meters to the southern side.
So I guess it's adjacent to the riprap that's there next to the wall.
Correct, Sean. Correct.
Perpendicular.
No, parallel.
Yes.
Parallel to the ramp,
Correct.
Right. Correct.
perpendicular to the shoreline, right?
That is right. That is right there.
And it would go the entire length of the ramp,
Correct.
as it was prior to them removing it.
Well, I'll check with conservation. I mean,
I don't think you need
my only concern is if you put it, down lower than the mean high tide line, if that, is not allowed according to conservation requirements. So we'll have to see. So what I'll do is I'll talk to conservation about what has been proposed, and if there's no issues, great. If there are, I'll bring them back and we can address them and see what needs to be done.
Great.
Mr. Talbot, go ahead.
I was down there looking it over, and I think that this sounds like a really rational attempt to try to solve the sand problem. Unfortunately, the incline grade is not enough, and it's fairly dysfunctional in terms of trying to. We need to maybe look at. Are we willing to just say are we going to just have a fairly less useful ramp because of its grade, or do we want to consider, once we look at if we solve the sand problem, that we want to consider something, if there is anything else to consider in terms of being more of a productive boat ramp? I ask that now because the waterways people are here, and I'd like to hear what they have to say about that.
Well, Dave, and I wish Andy was on, but for the most part, the regattas and the small boats that are launched there are Optis or 420s, something you and I could pick up with a small handheld trailer, and they float basically in about 8 inches of water. So all they have to do is get into this much water, and their finest kind. So unfortunately, we don't have a steep slope there. I mean, that would be a big effort, in my opinion. And I think if we make it safe so the sand is not there, the kids will be able to launch the small boats that are used for the training and for the regattas that are there, Dave.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, any more comments? Any more waterways folks need to say anything? Okay, sounds like we've got that one at least.
Thanks, Roger.
Progress.
Thank you.
Okay, we're good. While we have Mr. Mello here, we'd like to recognize him and his assistant, Rob Miller, for the fine work they did preparing and handling the tropical storm Isaias. And as usual, they do a great job anyway, but we wanted to be sure to thank you for the work you did. And you saved our town attorney too, which, by the way, if he was still out on the boat, he'd be charging us, so it's a good thing.
He still is.
Yeah. So we want to make sure that you knew that we were paying attention, and as always, you folks do a great job, and we thank you very much for that.
Thank you. You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be of service. Both of us did the best we could, and hopefully made a difference with that brush with a hurricane.
It sure sounds like you did. Anybody else like to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. You do a great job all the time.
Thanks, Roger.
Amen.
Mr. Mickelson.
I called the harbor master the day after and thanked him for his job, and took it in stride as he usually does. It's even it happens to seasoned veterans on the water. It does happen, and it's just a matter of time that at some point that somebody will end up in that same position, and through no fault of their own. It's just the way it is. You're in a hurry, and the knot slips or whatever. But Steve, as usual, you do your job all the time, 24 hours a day. You guys are at the beck and call of any disasters, and I can't thank you enough. You and your staff.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's a good point you make, that anybody can have a bad day out there on the water, including the professionals, and anything that we can do to turn that around or salvage, that's why we're here.
I think it's important for the townspeople to know how well our boaters are taken care of, and for non-boaters that don't have reason to know that, this helps them understand that. And again, you do a great job. Keep up the good work, you and Rob. Mr. McDonald.
Yeah, I was always under the impression that the boating community was a very helpful community to each other, but I guess in this case it wasn't, and I appreciate, and I'm glad, I'm very happy to know that Steve is out there along with his staff, ready to give aid whenever it's necessary. So I'm glad that happened. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Steve, and Waterways.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
Thank you from both of us. Have a good night.
You too. Take care. Okay. Next item is Youth Commission Letter of Interest. Mr. McGinnis.
Yes, so we received a letter of interest of being on the Youth Commission from Kempton Campbell, and you see his letter in the packet, and he is joining us tonight if you would like to meet him.
Okay, Mr. Campbell, if you'd like to unmute yourself and say hello to the community, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, fellow members of the Select Board. My name is Kempton Campbell. I'm 19 years old, and I'm studying political science and human rights at the University of Connecticut. Past year, I've been a town meeting member ever since I turned 18. And so Dartmouth is something that, I hold true in my heart. On top of that, I've grown up here throughout all my teenage years. And even on top of that, I'm a crisis counselor with Crisis Text Line. And so I've been doing that for the past 6 months. And so something revolving around human rights and advocating for youth in this town is something that I truly take passion in. And that's because I grew up in Dartmouth throughout my teenage years. And so I have so many friends and even family members who are youth in this town who could greatly benefit from what the Youth Advocate has to offer. And so if I can do that level of advocacy on the Youth Commission, I would love the opportunity to be able to.
Okay, I will ask the obvious question. I assume we have a vacancy, and how many vacancies do we have? Just one? Okay. You have to unmute yourself if you want to talk, Jamie. But I got the figure, yes. Okay, so we have one. So what's the board's pleasure? I assume we're the appointing
I just have
authority.
one quick question of Kempton. Kempton, just out of curiosity, I know you stated you were studying at UConn. I can always tell by the sweater that you're wearing. Are you, if the meeting has to be held during the school year, are you available to come from Connecticut to Dartmouth if you are at school? You're probably online learning, but I just wanted to double check that.
Right. So for this year, it's still uncertain for the fall year. However, I have talked with Chairman Jack Hart, and we have discussed the potential to telecommute. And so telecommuting wouldn't be a problem in terms of time. And so I would not be able to attend all meetings in person. However, by telecommunication, I would be able to.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Anyone else?
This is the realm of nowadays, so.
Right.
Yeah. Mr. Mickelson.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Mr. Campbell to that position.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call. Mr. Mickelson.
Yes.
Mr. Tattelbaum.
Yes.
Mr. Herron.
Yes.
Mr. Selectwood, yeah. Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
Yeah, and me, yes. I think you changed the name under your picture. It confused me. Yes. Mr. Campbell, congratulations, and thank you for your service to the town. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, next item. Youth Commission job description. Mr. McGinnis, would you like to lead us on that?
Sure. So Mr. Jack Hart from the Youth Commission had emailed in a proposed job description for the new youth advocate position, which would be a youth and family advocate. So as you know, town meeting voted to fund the youth advocate position at the 71,000, maybe 199. I don't know if that's exactly what it is, but that's pretty close. So it's been, when we review the job description, I considered it a new position. So I asked both our town council and our labor council to kind of weigh in on what they thought. They were thinking, their assessment is in the packet. I think you see that. Their opinion was that they considered a new position at a new grade. Town meeting had funded the position at its salary. It wasn't funded to be more. And also the position would be considered a new position, which would have to go to town meeting, but would also have to be collectively bargained with the union. They did feel that the position could be refilled as a youth advocate at the salary that was approved at town meeting. So that is kind of where things are at, but certainly the Youth Commission can weigh in. And also, there's the discussion of, we have the non-essential hiring and spending freeze. So it's, we'd be up to the board to decide if they feel this position is essential, we can look to fill it, or if they want to have some discussion about, where it's at or how it fits in with the town as a whole. And with that, I'll let, Jamie kind of talk about what they envision the position and how they would like to fill it.
Yeah, well, Jamie's turned himself back on again. Let me make a couple of comments. I have a problem. First of all, I know it's an important position. There's no doubt about that. Whether it's fits into the category of something that should be filled immediately or not, I'm not sure of. I mean, it hasn't been filled in a year and a half, so I don't know how essential it actually is if you've done without it for a year and a half. That's point one. Point two, as we all know, the town went through a reclassification study over the last couple of years, and a lot of that was implemented in this year in the salaries for the contracts, which made things quite hectic and confusing. But part of that was that not everybody's job rate was going to go up. Some of it was going to go down. And this was unfortunately one of the jobs that was deemed to be at least $10,000 out of position. Is that right, Mr. McGinnis?
The proposed salary range for this position was $60,500 to $78,650.
Okay. So
$2,000 below for someone, starting out in that position.
Yep. So, again, I don't know where we go from here. Clearly, we don't have the money to go above the 71,000, whatever it was, because that was what was approved. We didn't even have that until the town meeting moved the money from the reserve fund. So I'm not sure how we could possibly fund a new position. So I don't know how, Jamie, how do you feel about starting it out at the old job title with the old salary and moving on from there?
So I think from a priority standpoint, our community has been underserved and unserved for the last year and a half. So getting somebody into a position is paramount. I think the second piece is that what we've been trying to do with this position for the 2 years previous before that time period as well. So that's now 3.5 years. We're trying to elevate the position slightly so that it is somebody that has the master's degree, the licensure, plus the 5 years of experience, which then allows them to bring in graduate students to have additional people to provide services at no cost to the town. So that's the model that we've been going for. I think the existing candidate pool the last time that we had searched for this, yielded us some candidates. I'm concerned that for the 71,000 price tag that we may not be able to do that. Again, it's that old adage that you get what you pay for, and we're looking for a qualified professional who's going to be able to do the job well. Having said that, I would rather have a person in that role than not at this point.
And you want them to stay.
Yeah,
and we want that person to stay and be successful. We don't need to make this a revolving door.
It seems to me, I agree with you, but if you step into it, we fill the old position with the old title, there's less hassle, first of all, and fill it with the old salary. We could then move it on from there through the process that needs to be done, including town meeting again. So I agree with you. It's better to have something than have nothing, I think. That would be my take on it.
I think that we're open to doing that.
You may not be able to get the exact person you want, but maybe you could, if that's the low end of what a person is looking for, and then it can be adjusted later on if everything gets approved and the title gets changed and all that other stuff.
Right. I mean, we certainly don't hire police chiefs with the idea of, well, we'll bring you at the bare minimum salary with the promise of maybe in the future getting you more. So it is what it is. Correct. We'll do the best that we can with what we're able to get. And then we'll work through all of the legislative and bureaucratic channels to be able to make those changes as we go forward.
Okay.
But again, I think it's important that we, in terms of finance committee and select board and youth commission, are all on the same page of the direction that I believe that you understand that we're trying to take this.
Yep. Okay, colleagues, comments? Mr. Talabon, please.
We've obviously been around this issue. It hit every level of comp. I think the position we've ended up with is somewhere in between. It's going to be, I think it's quite effective. We're not going to be in the full-time, day-to-day council business, but we're going to do something that we feel is going to be worthwhile. Town meeting, I haven't seen many votes that have been more vocal and more supportive of anything we voted on than this position. People want this position, and I think it's critical that we move and make a decision tonight to move forward. And we all do it in a way that's unanimous, or close to unanimous, and supportive, because we need to get it done. What's going on in our schools right now is scary, and I think the sooner we get some help, any kind of help with our kids in town, I think the better off we're going to be. And let's go out and see what the marketplace is for this position and get things going. They're ready to go. They've got a vision. They have a job description that seems quite logical to work. It's not too high. It's not too low. It's something we think we can aspire to and be effective. And I think we need to move on this and do it quickly.
Any other select board members, comments before I turn it loose to others? John, please.
I looked at the job description, and I don't think it's correct for this person to report to the town administrator. This person should report to someone in the school department, similar to the other people in the school department that have similar backgrounds and job descriptions. Also, I feel this job is not an essential job right now. I'm more worried about our senior citizens, where we've laid people off at the Council on Aging. I think we should address that issue first.
If I may respond, Frank?
Go ahead. Yep.
So one of the reasons why we were trying to rework this position was that we were taking and growing the position from just being focused on our youth to being that of youth and families. And John, I think to your point, we recognize the fact that we've got lots of grandparents at this point who are raising their grandchildren. It's an item that is uncomfortably dealt with at the Council on Aging. There are people who are there, but they're not specialists in that, whereas I believe the youth and family advocate is a much more appropriate role for them to be able to do. We've also talked long and hard about the siting of this position. Does it belong in the schools? Does it belong in the town? In talking with the school department about this, Bonnie Gifford was very clear about the fact that if she is going to be expected to take on this role, she has other priorities that are much higher on her level, and she wouldn't fund this position, which is why it's a more appropriate town position. And the other value of it being in the town is that it is a great liaison to the police department, to the courts, to other regional sorts of folks who are able to bring in, whether those are grants or other services that the youth advocate previously was able to do. They then are able to bring things to the police department or to the school system that if they were housed in any one of those things, they wouldn't necessarily be seen. So at a town level, they see it at a macro level. So I would respectfully disagree with that assessment.
Mr. McDonald, did I see your hand up?
Yeah. I just want to respectfully disagree with John on the reporting. If he's going to report to the school committee, then let the school committee pay for the position. You know, I mean, that's just the way it should be. They can work in conjunction with the school department, but the reporting back to should be the town administrator and the youth commission.
Okay. Any other board members like to comment? Mr. Talabon, please.
This also is, I would say this is not just a non-essential position, it's the very essential position. And town meeting has spoken. They want this position. It's a priority, and it has to be. This is not a non-essential position.
Okay, Terry, I know you wanted to say something.
I did. Thank you for putting me on the list of people to speak. My name is Terry Ham. I live at 30 Alden Ave, Dartmouth. I'm a human service professional. I've been a director of student services for 20 years locally, and before that I worked as a teacher with adolescents who had emotional and behavioral challenges. And I was responsible in my role previously for developing programming and making sure that services were available to a pretty vulnerable population. This is a very important service that we're talking about tonight, and I have very strong feelings about it. I'm speaking tonight. I'm on the Finance Committee, but I'm not speaking as a Finance Committee member. I'm speaking as a resident and as somebody who has experience in this area. And I have two concerns about the proposal in front of us, and I had these concerns before the pandemic, I will say. I also briefly served on the Youth Commission. And when I was there, my understanding, I remember after I retired, I was so pleased to hear that this town had a youth advocate, because I thought that was just a cool service to have available, and I didn't know much about it. So when I looked into it, I learned that this law was put in place at a time when there was not parity in mental health services. The mental health system was not developed the way that it is now. And it was previously filled by somebody who was in the position, I think, for 30 years or so, right? Wasn't the previous person in? And then when this position was filled by a new person, I understood when I was on the Youth Commission, and I'll admit I was very short period of time on that commission, but there were concerns with the way that the position had evolved over time and how that position interacted with the schools and with the mental health community, and what were the limits and the boundaries of that position. And those were just starting to manifest. And when the new person came in, there were more of those concerns, trying to figure out what were the limits, what were the parameters for the position. I remember asking for the person who was in the position to set goals, and I was told that, and there was some resistance to doing that. And when I spoke to the previous town administrator, not Sean, about that, I was told that because of the way that the position was structured, the fact that it was a union position, there was not a direct line. I mean, I kind of imagined, having worked in public schools, there's a superintendent, there's a principal, people who work in the buildings are accountable to those people and to the school committee or parents, whoever else might ask questions. I was looking for kind of accountability in that person, and I was not able to see that that would happen. So my first concern is, although this job description says that the person reports to the town administrator, I wonder if they really do, or is it a situation where the town administrator is unable to evaluate that person and to kind of help with the feedback? That's one question, because although I know that the Youth Commission is there for good reasons in terms of their oversight of this person, there's limitations to that. So my first question is that, where is the accountability? I'm very concerned about the situations this person is going to be involved with and the potential liability for the town. That is a big concern. And I'll just say what my other question is, and then whoever can answer would. I'm also concerned, and when John talked about the school system, I think there's a natural kind of common sense thought that this service is provided through the schools. And I know that we're in a very obviously unique situation right now with the school closure, but as a rule, the schools do have people who assist parents with some of the things that you're talking about here. There's an emergency room, ER, there are other alternatives. I agree that there are times that people don't know how to negotiate that system or navigate that system. And when you have a crisis, I can't even imagine trying to figure it out. So I get the concern about having somebody who can be a resource. I just am concerned that it's going to be like, previous persons in the position, duplicative. And I wonder if there has been consideration given to contracting for this service through, for example, I just throw out New Bedford Child and Family. I don't even know if they were an agency when I was working that we would go to for this kind of support. I don't even know if they're still in operation the way they were before. But I wonder if the idea of, rather than hiring a person to try to build a kingdom, also to, put a lot of things in place. The job description is 4 pages long. Was there thought given to contracting with somebody who's already providing this service that would be available 24/7? So my 2 questions: number 1, accountability. Who really is going to supervise and set goals, and how do we decide that this is a worthwhile program? And number 2, is it duplicative? I'm concerned about that. And I have shared, just to be fair, I have shared some of these concerns with Jamie in the past, just to kind of put them out there and be helpful, because as I said, I get that this is I think the conversation at town meeting was very emotional for the reasons that the situation we're in, as well as the fact that I think everybody knows somebody who has been in crisis and has needed help. And we would like to think that we have that service available. I'm just not sure that we will with this arrangement. Okay, that's it.
So I can answer those, Terry. I can't answer those as eloquently as you asked them, but I will fill you in. So when I started working with the previous youth advocate, what I do, my philosophy and management style is to meet with the department heads regularly. So at least monthly, but mostly bi-monthly, we meet. And what I do with the department heads is we talk about the workload. We talk about goals, and then we talk about metrics, like how are we going to measure what you're doing against, generally it's against, competing towns or against how it matches up with the community, what kind of service are we providing to the community. So we can look at the position and say, yeah, you know what, there's a huge workload here. We need to expand upon this. Or, you know what, there's not the same workload that used to be, but there's a need in this area, we should work to this. So the way I was working with the previous youth advocate is we were talking about these goals. She would meet with the youth commission. They would go over that as well. And I think we were in line when we talked about it. It's really just a kind of about showing where the need is and how do we meet that need. So that's kind of how we cover that. Now, when we look at positions, yes, I mean, Jamie and I had talked about this, maybe outsourcing through a contract. We did the same thing with the energy manager. So we had that position. We were looking to fill it. We found better value and better service by going with an energy consultant, and that's worked out really well. That's something that I'm certainly willing to visit with the youth commission and see if that works out well. But they have worked very diligently to try to get this position filled as a full-time position. So that's something that they would present to the board, and the board can discuss that, and we can certainly look at that and come up with some options if that's what the board wants to see.
Jamie, you have any additional comments, please?
Certainly, yes. We certainly have discussed the issue of the duplicative services with the school. And again, the reality is that the schools in 1969 were not providing this level of service, that they've definitely changed over time. But the reality is the school schedule is as it is. It is a daytime service that is not available on weekends, and it's not available during the summers. And it's not available in the evenings. And that is one of the areas that we are trying to step into and be sure that we're able to provide that service level is, in the afternoons and the evenings, using the interns that we're hoping to be able to bring in, that we're going to be able to provide that level of service through this new model. The schools are completely on board with that. As Terry had pointed out, there have been some questions of, where is it that our services begin and where theirs end, and how do we work collaboratively together so that, if somebody's aware of a hospitalization, that, if the schools are aware of that, how can they utilize the youth advocate in helping them, and vice versa. And so I think a lot of that comes from the personality and the coordination issue. And Bonnie Gifford and her staff of the mental health professionals all met and see this as being additive and not duplicative. So I think that that's an important support level that we've been able to get so far. We have talked about the idea of outsourcing. As Sean had mentioned, Child and Family Services was certainly one of the agencies that we had discussed this with. Unfortunately, their target market is really people who are on mass health, and they're not looking at what are sort of all the other opportunities that are available through other insurance coverages. And they definitely, we recruited one of the people who came to talk with us onto the board. And so she's been able to add a really great extra voice in terms of what are some of those differences that are available. And her assessment definitely has been that this is a unique service that a town has available to it that allows us to focus. And it allows to make sure that all Dartmouth residents are aware of these services and can take advantage of those. They've had a real problem and a challenge working out of New Bedford with a regional focus to be able to get Dartmouth families to engage with them. And hopefully this is one of the ways in working with our youth advocate that they're able to sort of extend that. Again, the whole model that we're trying to create with this new youth advocate approach is that we're not going to find a family that is in crisis and then hold on to them and support them through the termination of that problem. Our goal is to help assess what the challenge is, refer them out to agencies where they're going to get better long-term health, and support them in the meantime until they're able to get there. Our own family has gone through some significant challenges this summer, where our own daughter went into crisis and had to be hospitalized. And as Terry has sort of eloquently stated, there's nothing worse than having your family fall into crisis because there is no roadmap. And as we talked with the therapists that are available, they claimed and they fully accepted the fact that our system is horribly broken in Massachusetts. And the only saving grace is that it's better than other states who are far worse off than we are. And as a family, we struggled for weeks to be able to find a local therapist, to be able to understand how do you find hospitalization, where do you go, who's taking care of that coverage. And of all of the potential people in this town, you might think that the chair of the Youth Commission might be uniquely suited to be able to understand those. And I will tell you that we are not. And so that underscores the necessity of us having that town position who's able to coordinate that level.
Okay. Mr. Tattelbaum.
Obviously, the debate is not whether the need is there. The debate is how the town can best serve that need. In the old model of youth commissioner, youth advocate, it was old and it needed to be totally renovated. I don't know if this is the answer, but I know we have a lot of good people who's trying really hard to put a model together. And I'd be the first to say a year from today, whenever the year from today this person is hired, we're going to take a hard look at all those metrics and how we're doing with it. Is it working? And report back to our town as to where we think we should be going with it. I think this is a one-year master experiment in something that's new, needed, and with good people trying to make this thing work. And I think it's time we just go forward and do it.
Mr. Mickelson.
Yes. I've been quiet through all this.
We noticed.
So, town meeting has spoken. We owe it to town meeting. Almost unanimously had spoken in favor of this. It didn't squeak by. So everyone has some great points. Look, 6 or 8 months prior to this, I was really not in favor of it. Now with what's going on in our school system or not going on, we don't know what's going to go on. The opportunity to have someone close by in Dartmouth offering some types of services for that person or the family or everyone included. I find my heart goes out to every family that's going to send kids to school or not send kids to school. The kids are confused, not just the younger ones, the older ones. They're all confused. And some are just more needy than others, and some just fall by the wayside. We can't afford to let these kids fall by the wayside. We cannot do it. It's incomprehensible that can happen. So I'd like to make a motion to do as town meeting said and spoke clearly, to look at this new model, to offer this position at $71,990 and find somebody that we can depend on and report. And I honestly believe, I think he still needs to report to the town administrator. That's my position. So that's my motion.
Okay. There's still some comments, so we'll hold that motion just for a moment. Mr. Garvin, would you like to speak, please? Please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bob Gorman, Finance Department. I did the minority opinion on not funding this particular position at town meeting. And it all started with the fact that, I thought we need a senior advocate in this town. The town is aging and the school population is shrinking. And there's a lot of stories where, a spouse dies and the other spouse, can't handle the situation. And, we find out because the grass isn't getting cut or the building's falling apart. They don't know how to use a checking account. So when I looked at that, I said, well, the youth advocate, where are we going to get the money? We don't have the money. And then I looked at the youth advocate position. And I said, well, that's probably where we could get the money, because as an as times change, the organization, being the town of Dartmouth, has to adjust to the needs of its residents. So that's kind of how it started out. And yeah, it's emotional, but I've heard emotional things, but I haven't heard, any kind of statistics. It's going on 2 years. I haven't heard of anything major happening. So who's provided this service over the 2 years since it's happened? And I also, from a finance standpoint, the budget was the reserve for the town this year was reduced by the cost of this youth advocate. And if there was ever a year where we need a good reserve, it's this year. And so now we don't have that. Now we don't have that flexibility. The other thing I wanted to point out was that I did a little bit more research, and the school department has 7 social workers. I was shocked. 7 social workers in the town of Dartmouth. And they have 5 psychologists. So, there's tremendous investment in the school with 7 social workers and 5 psychologists. And I understand that they're not available all the time, but they could be on call. I just think that, it's, as I said at the town meeting, we're the only town that has a youth advocate. So it must be being fulfilled by our school department. And the reason I know that the other towns don't have it is during the COVID, I went through all the websites of Fairhaven, Mattapoisett, Acushnet, Westport, and I looked for the position youth advocate, and I couldn't find it. And I just want to say one thing. In all due respect to Mr. Talabon, if this position hasn't been fulfilled in 2 years, that's the definition of non-essential. That said, if we hire this position, and then next year, in talking with Greg Barnes, all the money, all the federal money is going to be drying up. The money, the rainy day fund for the state, they're going to be hitting that. So, and we're not going to have a reserve. We'll have a very low reserve. So, we're going to be coming into a fiscal crisis, and I would hate to hire somebody and then lay them off. And the other thing I learned, and I believe that we're going to be doing remote learning this year. So I question, the need to. I understand it's in the budget, but I really question the need to hire somebody to do this position.
Let me make a couple of comments on that. I appreciate all the points you've made. I would also point out that we've moved beyond most of those things because town meeting has declared this it's going to be a position. We're going to have this. The question is, where does it go from here? Who manages it? Who controls it? Who keeps track of it, et cetera, et cetera. The school, I agree, the school has a lot of resources. We have no control over the schools and how they spend their money. Okay. And that's the way that everything's laid out. So that's what we have to deal with. So I also agree with the point that there are seniors that need help. Now, I don't know if this job can expand in the future, since it has a family tag to it or will have a family tag to it. Maybe that might fit under the umbrella at some point down the road. But right now, we can't change any of those things basically that you mentioned. We are going to have a youth advocate. It's going to be paid at the $71,991 or whatever it is. We're going to move forward. In the future, we'll have to adapt it and adjust it as needed by the town's needs. So, Mr. Talabon, you.
At what point in time are we completely losing respect for the democratic process, Bob? The people have spoken. You've made these arguments. I have respect for you making them, but you lost. People want this position. Let's get off it and get behind it all and say, okay, let's make it work. And if it doesn't, we'll change it. Why do we have to be so divisive? The people have spoken. They want it. Let's do it.
Mr. Garvey, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to respond to that. We voted to put it in the budget, but we didn't. Right now, we're in a kind of a crisis mode, and we have to decide which positions to fulfill. And this is one of the positions. So it has nothing to do with, you're right, I mean, it was voted on the budget. So I'm not against democracy at all. I'm just saying that, you're looking at a lot of positions that either essential or not essential, and you're gonna have to make decisions going forward, because it's a hiring freeze. So
I'm totally
that's
prepared.
the point I want to make.
I'm totally prepared.
Yeah, I will also point out that the past is the past. Okay, we are going to move forward. There's no doubt about that. The question is, how do we move forward? What's the best way to move forward, given the needs of the town and everything else? I also recognize the fact that depending on where the state cuts are going to, how much they're going to be and where they're going to come from, we are going to have layoffs in this town. There's no doubt about it. But there will be a youth advocate position because it was deemed necessary by town meeting and funded by town meeting. And I'm never a big fan of taking money out of the reserve fund, but I will say that the finance committee over the last few years with their own policies has been rather tight with the reserve fund and not spent a whole lot of money on it anyway. So I'm not sure it's going to make a difference.
Right.
Any other comments? Gloria, did you want to make a comment?
Oh, thank you. I attended this evening because I'm the liaison to the commission, so I wanted to be able to be abreast of the situation. I will say that I respect town meeting's decision and we need to move forward. I wanted to know if there were any other contracting opportunities available that would meet the current budget amount. I mean, I know that it's not exactly, the new job description that you're seeking, Jamie, but it sounds like maybe not. Maybe there were no other contracting opportunities that would fit within the current budget, right, of the 71,000. So that if you did that temporarily and then you revisited a revised job description in the future.
Yeah, we lost you, Gloria. I know it still says you're on, but your mouth was moving and there wasn't a whole lot coming out. Sorry.
Can't hear me? No.
That was your best material, Gloria.
Okay.
There must be a sensor out there that's cutting you short or something.
Okay. All I'm saying is, obviously we're moving forward, right? Because the town meeting vote. So my question was, it's not exactly the new job description and the dollar amount that you were looking for, Jamie, but with the 71,000 or whatever the figure is there a contracting opportunity that would just be almost like something that you would use temporarily until you're able to resolve the new job description?
So respectfully, Gloria, I believe that we've resolved the job description to the best of our ability at this point, in that the committee has looked at this issue and stated that, this is not something that can exist as a contract. Any more so than if we wanted to contract out for, say, professional library services. I'm sure we could defer to New Bedford for their library services, which are far superior in number and perhaps in educational quality. But we want our own librarians because we want them to look out for our needs. In the same respect that we have our own Council on Aging because our community has unique and different kinds of needs. With our youth issues as well. Two very quick points of information I'd like to add. The first is that, Bob, I appreciate the fact that you've done some research in the area and looked at sort of our communities immediately around us. When we started this process literally a year and a half ago, Sean asked us to look at all of the comparable communities that we were looking at with our salary studies. And so we wanted to look at communities that were similar to us in demographics, in size, in dollar amounts. And we did that work and we've reported that work, and that's gone back to the select board as well. We've looked into those communities that have youth advocate positions, how they've grown and expanded those, how the youth advocate was the model from the 60s, how it's now a director of human services, it's a director of youth and family kinds of services. And what we were trying to do was to bring that language and that job description into current practice, in current best practice. Along with that is tying them in with Mass Municipal Association and other connections to make sure that we are continuing to be at the table where those best practices are discussed. While I appreciate the small amount of research that you were able to do, I think that ours was far more comprehensive and very targeted. And that's what you've asked us to do, is to be the eyes and the ears of the community around youth issues. And I think that we've met that burden. The last issue, and this speaks, Bob, to the sort of question of, from your perspective, if it's gone unfilled for a year and a half and you haven't personally heard of any issues, that there must not be any. This is a complaint that we've heard frequently. And what I will share with you is that it's obvious, and why would somebody have come to you, and why would you know about very personal issues that are generally not discussed in public? These are the types of issues that are talked about with school counselors, with therapists, and our youth commission has been handling things like there's a family at Christmas time who literally the family has lost their job. It was a 2-week wrinkle in time. They don't have any money. What can we do to help find presents for them and to make sure that their electricity is not shut off, and heating for their families so that they're literally not shivering in the cold? Those are the kinds of issues that are affecting our children that are spawned out of adult issues, which is why our focus is trying to expand not just to youth, but youth and families. There's, I'm not going to say hundreds, but there are many, many examples of those kinds of experiences that our board has been dealing with in connection with the schools, as well as people who've been contacting us directly. We don't talk about that very often publicly because of the private nature of those kinds of things. But I can assure you is that it is likely that if it's not you and in your family, then it's likely to be your neighbors or somebody else, and they're not discussing those issues because they're extremely private. How many people are willing to just jump up and say, oh yeah, the alcoholism problem in our family, yeah, that's really been a problem, and 3 people got arrested and we had a fight, and now the kid is going to jail, and it just happens that one of the kids happens to have been beaten up by a member of the community who's got a stature in town government. These are real situations, and they require handling with deftness, which is why we need a professional to be in that position to help guide our families and our community through those challenging problems.
Okay, thank you all. I'm assuming our task tonight, Mr. McGinnis, is to vote to pass this on to the Youth Commission and start a hiring process and bring someone back for us to gauge on salary and that sort of thing. Is that true?
Well, there's a couple things came up. So the board would need to agree to rehire the youth advocate position as is at the salary that was voted at town meeting. The topic of evaluating a consultant came up. Jamie answered that, but if the board wants us to evaluate that, we certainly can look at that. And then if you want, we can start advertising the position to hire. My only request would be that if, I know it's been a while, but if we could wait maybe a month or so longer, or a month longer, just because we have the clerk's position, we have the election coming up. Our personnel director has been out on leave for about 3 or 4 weeks, so it's it's not, we're having a hard time kind of getting some of these personnel issues accomplished right now. So that's all. So if the board wants to vote in however they feel, having said all that, what you want me to evaluate, if you want us to just start advertising the position, you just let me know.
Okay, Mr. Mickelson?
I've already, it was quite clear, I already made my motion. I would just amend it by delaying the advertising by, what did you say, Sean, 30 days, 60 days?
I mean, let's say 30 days, and I'll do my best. We just want to get past the primary election.
We have lots going on, so that would be my amendment to my motion.
Do we have a second?
I second, but I'd like to, a maximum of 30 days.
Okay.
Well, we'll advertise it within 30 days, and then it takes a few weeks for the position for the applicants to come in, and then the interview process. So, but we'll start advertising within 30 days.
I think we need to maintain some flexibility because there's some things that probably might be out of our control.
Yep.
So we have to allow for that so we don't have to keep meeting and making adjustments. So, okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call. Mr. Mickelson.
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yes.
Mr. Herron.
No.
Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So that we can at least move forward. Jamie, you can plan on something happening soon, hopefully. Okay.
Night, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Sean will be in touch.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Item F, Eva's Garden Conservation Restriction. Mr. McGinnis?
Yes, so Alan Decker is here. So Eva's Garden's been before you before. This is really just I want to say a housekeeping or a correction to a name. Mr. Decker can explain what he's here proposing tonight, but the board's already approved this conservation restriction. This is just a formality.
Okay, Mr. Decker, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, fellow board members this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. As you may know, I'm Alan Decker with the Buzzards Bay Coalition. And as Mr. McGinnis stated, this conservation restriction has been before you. This concerns the 10-acre conservation restriction that we hold on Eva's Garden, which is property at 105 Jordan Road. And last November, I brought this CR in front of you. It was approved. We got it on record earlier this year, back in May, and post-recording, it was discovered that the document that actually got recorded had some language in the wrong place. What I've provided to Mr. McGinnis is a tracked version of the CR that I believe should be in your packet. It literally means the movement of a paragraph from page 2 to page 18 in the conservation restriction. It's not a substantive change to the document in any way. It simply has to do with announcing that the United States, through the Department of Agriculture, has an interest in this project, and that's because we are using some USDA funding to help make the acquisition happen. What I'm asking for you this evening is actually to re-sign the signature page so I can re-record the conservation restriction at the New Bedford Registry. It's that simple. All the other parties have agreed, and I'm just seeking with Mr. McGinnis's guidance that you re-vote and re-sign the signature page for this CR. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Talbot?
I would say that this is the largest volume of pages for a housekeeping issue that I've ever seen in my career.
I certainly can appreciate that comment. And Mr. McGinnis certainly stated it correctly. This is purely housekeeping, and I hate to take up your time with it, but it is a necessary element.
I make a motion, we approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. A second, do you want to include with that Mr. McGinnis can sign for us?
Yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay.
I didn't anticipate that, and I realize that this is a difficult thing to accomplish. I'm not, I don't know. And Sean, have you dealt with this before? The board vote on?
The board will vote to stamp it, so we'll stamp it with their signatures.
Got it. Okay, got it. That's fine. Great.
It's been legal up to now, so we assume that it's still legal.
Haven't taken us away yet.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Keep track of that stamp. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We have a motion and a second, so we'll do.
You gotta add another 6 pages for the stamp approval now.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, sir.
Mr. Mickelson, roll call vote. Mr. Mickelson.
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yes.
Mr. Herron.
Yes.
Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
And me, yes. You're all set, Mr. Decker. Mr. McGinnis will make sure you're all set, and hopefully this time everything will be right and you'll be good to go.
Yes, thank you very much. John, I'll be in touch with you in the morning.
Yes, yep.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Welcome. Same to you. Thank you. Okay. YMC one-day license. This is, if you remember, this is something that already happened, and I had to give approval because we were not going to meet in time to give them their license approval for the one-day license, which they already had the event. So we need a motion and vote to make this perfectly legal. So if somebody would like to make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, Mr. Mickelson.
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yes.
Mr. Herron.
Yes.
Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
And me, yes. So we can get that off the docket. We've been carrying it for a while.
Yeah, they'll be happy.
Yeah. We won't go and take back any of the stuff they gave out. Okay, old business. Mr. McGinnis.
Sure, Blitz Corner update. So at the last meeting, the board asked me to contact DEP to see if they would come in to give an update to the board. I contacted our health director, Chris Michaud, who's been in touch with DEP and to relay your request. And they said after their next round of testing is complete, they're on the private lots, they will schedule a time to come in. So they didn't have a date on that, but they are aware that you want them to come in and give an update, so that once their next round of testing is done, they've said that. So we'll stay on them and we'll check in with them on that.
Great.
Did they give any indication at all as whether that's like a month or 6 months? No. Okay.
They're not ones for giving very specific.
I know it's a state. I know it was a foolish question, but I figured I had to ask it anyway. Okay.
COVID update. As you know, the schools, that's the real push to develop their plan to put it in place. So they're actually meeting tonight to finalize that in their meeting.
It's already been done.
Oh, okay.
Give me a minute.
Okay. Well, I'll just. Town hall's been open to the public. Things are going really well. There's been some nice social distancing going on. I mean, we're fortunate that we have a very large town hall, so we're able to accommodate a number of the public and employees. So that's been going well. We're starting to see more public coming in for services, and we're maintaining the health and safety of both the public and the employees.
All right, the school committee voted to go to full remote starting on September 15th, and possibly phasing into a hybrid at a later date. The vote was 4-1.
Great.
Good. I think that's probably the smart move at this point because we still.
Whether it is or not, I can tell you right now, there are a lot of PO'd parents on social media.
Right.
About not going back or going back?
About
or both.
Remote learning.
Wow.
Well, they probably work. A lot of these parents work.
Yeah, it's probably they have nothing to do with it.
That's a huge issue to these people.
Yeah.
We have to understand that.
It's a decision. It's a decision that has been made, and I think the decision would have ramifications no matter how it was.
Right. Exactly
and
right.
Nobody wins in this situation. I feel for the parents that have to work, that have to find other avenues for their kids for remote learning, and I also feel, I guess I don't know. It's a situation that whether or not the hybrid would have worked. I know they were talking, half a day for some, the other half, or odd days and different. It was a decision that was made, and they're just right now. There's some vocal parents on social media. I'm not sure what the temperature is of the rest of the the parents at home, but it's a situation that I'm sure was not going to be well received no matter what.
Yeah, I give them a chance to rethink that day on, day off. I didn't think that was going to work very well for parents to make plans. So it's easier to make plans for a week at a time as opposed to.
Well, the other thing too is that there are different segments here that you have to think about. There's the kids. There's the kids who are in the normal classroom setting. Then there's the teachers. Then there's the kids who need special assistance. With some learning problems, but not totally, but need some assistance. And then there are those kids that need a lot of assistance and a lot of help. So you've got a lot of things that have to come about. And I think what's going to end up happening is the kids that have severe disabilities and who need to be in school, they're going to be in school. And whereas because they can't get that remote learning, especially the kids with autism. And it's not a good situation. It's not a healthy situation, but there's a situation, you have to make do with what it is. I mean, some of the comments that are being made right now, that, the parents will say, well, they've had until March to figure it out. No, they didn't have until March. They had March to react to what was going on in March and April for May and June. So the difference is whether or not what was going to happen afterwards. Nobody knew that this was going to reemerge. You know, there were rumors that it was going to, you know, that a second wave was going to happen in the fall or late or early winter. You know, but nobody knew that definitely. And this is something that, you know, no matter where you are on the spectrum of the pandemic, whether you're, you know, alt-right or alt-left, or, you know, you agree the conspiracy and all, it doesn't make a difference. You know, people are contracting this disease. People have this disease, and some people are dying of this disease. And, you know, but no matter what was going to happen, however the situation is going to be, you're going to have people who are going to be pissed off because of it, and people who are going to applaud it. And then those people are going to look at what the other school systems do and stop pointing fingers. Well, if this school system did it, why didn't we? Or if this one did it, how come we didn't do it? You know, so it's a no-win situation.
Yeah, Mr. Tattelbaum.
I just to expand on that a little bit, Sean. I've been had some conversation with school committee members, and they have been put themselves through literal torture over the last couple of months, and also not having the information they needed because the state was waiting to see how things were going before they could get some guidance. I think we need to express our appreciation of what they've done, what they've gone through, and know that they said it straight out. They're willing to be flexible. They made one decision for September 15th, but they're going to monitor it and change it just as we have to. The whole country is doing it. And I think that we need to stand by them, and as things go forward, what can we do as a town, as a select board, to assist our schools in making things better? Because there's no right decision to this. There is none. And this is the biggest event and biggest decision-making process, I would almost say, in the history of our modern history of our town.
Yeah,
it sounds like a ridiculous statement, but this is giant. And I think we need to work together and respect the people, put the time in, and help them make this thing work and do the best we can to appreciate what they've done.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult situation, and you know the state sometimes doesn't help because it's a difficult situation for them also. But there is a whole lot of guidance that comes down sometimes, so decisions have to be made locally to the degree you're allowed to make decisions locally. So they are doing a lot of good work, and they'll figure out the best they can. That's the nice thing about having smart people trying to solve problems. So, okay, Mr. McGinnis, back to you, I guess.
Yeah. So. Fishing pier. So now I check in with Attorney Cruz, and he's still waiting to hear back from the state on this contract that seems to be never ending and the finalizing. So, you know, we continue to check in weekly. Town clerk update is, I've mentioned to the board, executive session. We've interviewed candidates for the interim town clerk position. We've narrowed it to 2 finalists that we will schedule a public meeting for the board to meet and make a decision on. We've also advertised internally and externally for the assistant town clerk position. You know, so in the meantime, you know, as I've mentioned previously, Kelly Thompson, who is the employee in the town clerk's office, has been phenomenal and a huge resource and a huge help. You know, she's done a great job in that office, keeping things organized and keeping things moving. We also have a number of staff that have come in early in the morning, late at night, on the weekend to help process these mail-in ballots out of that office. So either the staff are really recognizing that this town clerk vacancies, the 2 in there are need, and they're willing to pull together and be flexible. As I've mentioned earlier, throughout this COVID, the staff have really been great about being flexible with their workload and contributing to departments that have a greater need. So you know, I really appreciate the fact, and you as a board have mentioned that as well, that it's been great. They've been doing that. So that's where we are with the hiring, but in prep for the primary on September 1st, we've been putting together a list of requirements that are required by the state and timelines, and I've been working with Mr. Barnes. We also have an election consultant that we've been able to leverage, and she's come in and done a report for us, and we're meeting with her tomorrow to just lay out what we need to do, when we need to do it, so that we are prepared for the election, because early voting starts on the 22nd, which is not that far away. So we are prepared. We are getting our ducks in a row, and by the end of this week, we should have a solid plan. And we'll be contacting the poll workers and the polling locations and getting everything in line.
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate you, Mr. McGinnis, on the work you're doing with this, and all the others that are helping you get through all this. I mean, we've got a confused situation, disruption on top of the pandemic, and we're trying to make things work as a town as best we can. And I think so far, everybody, including yourself, has done an excellent job trying to make this all happen. And we all wish it wasn't that way, but it is that way. So we've got to respond to it. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see, minutes of July 27th. Anybody?
So moved.
Second.
Second, thank you. We have a motion and a second. So, Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
and I vote yes also. Okay, information. I don't know if anybody else has anything, but I just wanted to remind folks that in 10 years, every 10 years, the town has to go through a charter review. And this is our 10th year. So the town is still looking for some residents that would be interested in serving on a committee that's going to be very, I don't want to say tedious, but it certainly is important and long-lasting, so that approximately a year from now, we'll be able to present something to town meeting if there's anything to present. We're still accepting potential applicants. Mr. McGinnis, it's the 20th, is that right?
Yeah, we've extended it to August 20th, correct?
Okay. So if anyone's interested out there, please send your name into the select board office and we'll deal with it accordingly. Thank you all. Anyone else have information? Mr. Tattlebaum.
Question on something from our last meeting. Was it 2 weeks ago? Regarding Burgo basketball. We had a lengthy discussion about all the details and plans going forward, and time is going to be coming on quickly we need to have a lot of issues decided upon and information for a town meeting. And we talked about, with Mr. Burgo, getting some information and details about we can get it. So I don't know a thing about it. I was not involved in the previous process myself as well. And is it reasonable to ask for some kind of a time frame? Is something of a formal presentation on what the overall scope of his project is going to be from him, so we can then get our hands around that?
Well, you got to remember this is a two-part process. The first part is getting town meeting to agree for us to sell the land for recreational purposes. The first part doesn't actually include Mr. Burgo, so he has time to put together a plan to get for the second phase, which is once it's agreed, assuming the town meeting will agree for us to sell the land, we'll have to put it out to bid, and he will be part of that bidding process. At that time, he and others can present whatever they need to do to show us what the plan is.
So, and this is what I need some clarification from myself. So, what is there needed to be? What needs to be prepared for that town meeting to make the town, for the town to make that land available for sale? From no parties, any parties?
I'm working with town council to draft a warrant article that would allow for the sale of the parcels to an entity for recreational purposes. So we're in the process of drafting that, or town council is. What we'll do, we'll present that to the board to make sure that it fits what the board has in mind for the property. Okay. What types of recreational uses, we can get pretty specific, or we can keep it general. So we'll bring that before the board and for discussion.
Okay. So specifics from any proposal from anybody is not particularly necessary for town meeting?
Right. No. But that's because we had a choice of doing it in two different ways. We could try to come up with a plan first before it was available to be sold. We chose to do it the proper way, which is to make sure it's going to be sold before we start looking at plans.
Okay, so this article is only to decide whether the town wants to, what the town wants to do with the land, period.
If the town wants to issue an RFP to sell the land for recreational purposes with, a type of restriction a termination clause if something's not done within a certain number of years that it reverts back to the town, things like that.
Would that include the and this is coming from left field here, but the possibility of a lease as well as a sell? Or is it just a sell?
No, Mr. Burgo needs to have a sale because he cannot take any bank action on a land he doesn't own. So if he's...
Yeah, but this is, you just told me this is not about any particular plan. It's about a plan to the town, whether what town wants to sell the land or not, not to any one individual.
Right, but the whole thing was put in motion when Mr. Cressman suggested to Mr. Burgo that he might be interested in buying another piece of land.
Yeah.
So that's the path we're going to go down for a sale. Otherwise it does him no good, and was the whole reason we started this whole thing. I'm not saying.
That's my point. Then, if it's designed to be sold to him, then shouldn't we know more about what he plans to do with it before we decide we're going to sell it to him?
It's designed to be sold, period, for recreation purposes. That's the thing. Then after that, then it'll have to be bid out for the purchase.
Okay.
And then whoever is the winning bidder, or if there's a myriad of them, let's see what it looks like.
Okay.
But this is strictly right now to sell the land, period.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Anyone else?
I have a couple items that.
Please go ahead.
So, Tripoli. So the state is going to be aerial spraying. So it's in the news because the risk level is getting high. They are not spraying in Dartmouth. So it's out in the news. It just is on the South Coast. So I just wanted to let the board know that the issue is not in Dartmouth. They are not spraying here yet. But if anyone has any issues or questions, they can contact Bristol County Mosquito Control at 508-823-5253. And then also at the end of the month, tentatively scheduled for August 25th and 26th, the Health Department is going to be doing a drive-through flu shot clinic at the high school. So they're doing it 2 days. The first day is for town employees. They want to do town employees first to make sure that they can get the process down and get the kinks worked out. And then they will be doing it, open it to the general public on August 26th. And this is in coordination with Walgreens. So there'll be more information on that to come, and we can probably present it. But I thought if I brought it up at the August 24th meeting, it might be too late. So I wanted to give plenty of notice.
Yep. Is the mosquito spraying being done only in the areas right now that are considered high danger? Is that why Dartmouth is not being included?
Yes, they establish risk levels and determine where they want to spray.
Okay. In the past, residents were also able to call and request to have their area sprayed for their immediate area. Is that that's still possible, I assume?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on my calendar at the end, in the beginning of May, to send my annual request for my neighborhood.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right. Anything else by anyone? If not, we'll need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. Roll call, Mr. Mickelson.
Yes.
Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yeah.
Mr. Herron.
Yes.
Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
Yeah. And myself, yes. Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Nice job, Frank.
Thank you.